So good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's guest photographer session. Hi, Fiona. I know you're in the wings. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks, Jay. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. So we've chatted a couple of times today. It's been great to catch up, but I'm really pleased to have you back.
Thank
We
you.
had fantastic feedback from your first outing with us, if you like. And
Yeah.
my bad that I haven't brought you back any sooner, but I'm really pleased to have you with us again tonight. So I know you're very keen and happy for people to interact with you. So we've got the links for your website there, the new website that I had a look at today. It's very nice, and of course
Thank you.
interact with you via the Facebook page there as well, Fiona. Before we get started, obviously, I know there are people who obviously joined us on the first webinar, but for those who have not been on that with us, just a little bit really about sort of your journey into photography and obviously to where you are as a wedding photographer today.
Okay, so I've been photographing weddings for about 7 or 8 years now. Before I started working as a wedding photographer, I actually worked in TV, but I was fortunate enough to go back to college and study photography, and my lecturer at the time was a wedding photographer, and so I shadowed him, and using the work that I photographed on his weddings, I was able to set up my own business. So within that 7 years, I've become an associate member with the British Institute of Professional Photography, which has been great. And yeah, it's just something that I really love doing. Photography is my art, and I love sharing it with people. I love creating beautiful images for people, and business has just grown year on year.
Brilliant, excellent. Well, I've had a sneaky peek, so I know what's to come. And obviously, after the first presentation, which went down a storm, so it was great to have you back. So we won't waste any time. I'm going to give you the screen, so it's going to
Uh-huh.
come over to you now, and I'll let you know when everybody can see it clearly. So you should be getting that through now.
Yeah. There we go. Back in business.
Perfect, brilliant. So I'm going to go quiet, but obviously, guys, just to remind you, we do want you to interact with Fiona and I tonight. So any questions you have for Fiona, please pop them through the question panel. Fiona will prompt me if she'd like about questions, but we've allowed loads of time at the end for it as well. So Fiona, I'm going to go muted. It's all yours, and if you need anything, just give me a shout.
Sure. Okay. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I'd like to say hello to everybody. For those who did join me last time for my presentation, this is really a follow-up, really. Meeting client expectations was my first webinar here, and today I'm talking about the images that actually meet those expectations. So I've actually run this presentation before at the National Wedding Fair in London. What I found interesting during my time spent there was the number of people who I spoke to who wanted to have wedding photography. They really didn't want anything too posed. But when I asked them what that meant, they couldn't quite verbalise what that really meant to them. They just didn't want anything too cheesy. They wanted to have something stunning, but they didn't want to have anything. They didn't want to have anything posed. So tonight we're talking about creating picture-perfect wedding photographs, which is all about communicating with your clients. It's all about getting them to pose, but creating images that are just going to be breathtaking and stunning. So to start with, when we're talking about posing photography, we're talking about a few factors here. We're talking about creating something which is going to be very elegant, very natural, but something that our clients are going to absolutely love and adore. Social media is awash of selfies and special moments. People love snapping desserts, or with friends drinking wine, hanging out on beaches, or jumping out of aeroplanes. Never before has photography been so accessible or available to our clients, and this is one of the many reasons why wedding photography is so important. We're photographing a generation of image makers, and capturing and creating the most incredible photos on their wedding day is a must. So how do we get our clients to trust us creating gorgeous photos? We need to educate them. And this means that we need to direct them. We need our clients to stand or move in certain ways that creates gorgeous photographs. And this is why pre-shoots are so important. I touched on pre-shoots in my last webinar, I just wanted to go back to that today, because this is the time that we can capture our clients' trust and imagination. So how do we pull these things together? What makes the perfect picture? Expression, elegance and character, location and natural light. And pulling these things together is actually quite simple. Our natural reaction when we stand in front of a camera is to freeze. Suddenly we go from being quite relaxed with movement through our bodies to dead still. And for this reason, we want direction. I bet you there have been many times when when your clients, your couples have been standing in front of you and you're ready to take their portrait, but they just kind of stand there and they're waiting for you to give them some form of direction. And that's what we need to do. So when a client says that they don't really like posing and stuff like that, really what they mean is that they just, going back to what I said earlier, they just don't want anything too cheesy. So let's start with my lovely bride, Kobe. I start by finding the right location. Now, we're in a hotel room here and there's absolutely no space. There's this hideous curtain to the left of the image. I think you'll be able to see there. And you've got the TV, which is mounted on the wall. There's a 4-poster bed behind us. It's very crowded, it's very cramped, and as you can see, the wallpaper is really loud. Kobe's just standing there. Like I said, she's just wanting me, she's waiting for me to give her a little bit of direction. Now you can see the way that she's stood in front of the camera, she's got no shape to her at all. Her knee is slightly bent and it's pulling on her dress. And as she's standing, she's looking straight onto camera. She's looking quite broad. So I've basically tried to create something really elegant for her here. And by asking Kobe to face the window, I've immediately lit her in a different way. I've narrowed her frame as well. And I've asked her to push her hips towards the window, which has created a little bit of shape. And it drops her shoulders. Her shoulders then, sort of drop back a little bit and we get this curve coming through her. I've also considered the hands in this photograph, and giving hands something to do makes us feel a lot more comfortable and it can bring a photo to life. Here I've asked Kobe to place her hands so they show the narrowest points, which brings elegance to the image. I've also asked her to just take a deep breath and let it out through her mouth, and this creates a nice expression. Suddenly we've gone from the previous photograph which was crowded, to this elegant bridal portrait in a matter of minutes. Similarly here, in this scenario, I've looked for a background which matches the elegance, and I found this incredible staircase in Dartmouth House. And this time I've asked the bride to put her back towards the light, which allows the light to wrap around her. And by asking her to bend her arm and softly move it away from her body, the light has come through to illuminate her side and waist. By now, Kobe really knows what we're looking for, and she just falls into the pose quite elegantly. She just bends her knee, she's quite relaxed. And by doing so, we've created a bit of shape in the bottom of her dress. In this situation, I've moved the groom towards the light a little bit more, so the light now falls across his chest. By turning his foot slightly towards camera, with his knee slightly bent, hand in pocket, he looks very elegant. And just by creating a little bit of extra energy, I've asked him to put his hand on the banister. And bringing them together to shoot their portraits finishes off this really elegant set. So you can see these images are already moving towards meeting these client expectations and creating something quite special. In contrast to the last set of images, this mighty stag at Gosfield Hall cries out for something striking and dramatic, especially with the added mist. I think this might have been taken a year ago. So again, this is about, is about creating something which has got elegance and beauty. My clients come to me, they know what they want, they know what they're going to get out of me. We've gone through the pre-shoot, we've practiced how to stand. So here it was quite easy for us to create these beautiful images. And generally, all I've asked her to do, actually, you can see that she's quite cheeky in her expression, but by just creating a little bit of movement in her body, I've asked her to put some weight onto the back leg, which gives that nice curvature coming through. Her hands and arms have been placed really nicely and elegantly, always looking for the narrowest point so the hands don't become too visually distracting. And I've asked her just to drop her chin slightly, and that brings out this lovely expression in her face. Then we have Stuart, on the other hand, who looks really kind of strong against that stag. We needed something that was going to complement the stag and the masculinity of it. So I've asked him just to stand in a triangle with his hands in his pockets, looking directly down the lens of the camera. So we've created something quite powerful. Again, these are just taken very, very quickly. And bringing them together, we've created something really romantic, very striking, and something that they're going to really cherish. Sometimes we don't always need to stand next to each other to create an atmospheric image. Here the chaise longue comes into its own. It would have been awkward having a couple sitting together on this chaise longue because of the noisy picture in the background. But the location and light are perfect, and I really wanted to use the chair. So I placed Catherine into the corner, again being mindful of her hands, always looking for that narrow point. I asked her to tuck her knee underneath her skirt to make the skirt look nice and full, so we've got shape to her lower part of the body. And I've just asked her to point her toe out a little bit so we get a little bit of energy coming through. I've asked Brian to sort of lean against the wall, almost to reflect Catherine's nice casual pose here. So we've created this pretty nice image, both looking pretty relaxed and confident at their wedding day. How am I doing, Jay?
Yeah, good, love. I've got a question for you on that last one, just about to jump in and I couldn't find the mute button. Is that all natural light?
All natural light, yes. I only use natural light. I might put the flash gun on in the evening to photograph the first dance or speeches. You know, if it gets, the weather and the time of year obviously dictates when that happens, whether it's earlier or later. But yeah, all natural light.
Perfect. And another question I just had for you. Could you please explain about the hands at the narrow point? Can you just elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, so if we look at Catherine's hands here, you see how if you look at her expression in her face, she's looking out of the window. And then you move down to the shoulders and her arms have been stretched out onto the chaise longue. And rather than having the wrists sort of flop over the very edge, I've asked her to actually just lean them on the top. And so all we get to see really is the thumb and her index finger, maybe. Can you see? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then if we follow the other arm round, we've got her elbow, which is nicely resting on the chair, and then her wrist is really soft. And again, all we can see is just a few fingers, but we're looking at the side of the hand. And if I go back to this shot here with Jenna Lee and the stag, her hand is tucked into her waistline, just on top of it, and all you can see is the thumb. So again, we're looking for the narrowest point. If her hand was around her waist with her fingers, normally, you know, you'd stand with your hand on your hip and your fingers would be kind of coming across your stomach slightly. There'd be quite a big distraction to the image, personally.
Yeah, great. Thank you. That was a great explanation. Just quickly jumped in before we move on. Obviously, talking about going back to, natural light.
Yeah.
Are you ever worried about shooting at higher ISOs?
No, not really. There's an image at the very end of this webinar, and we had barely any light at all, and I had to rank the ISO up quite considerably, and it brings a nice effect. It brings the textures to mean something quite different, and it almost gives the image a pictorial, quite a painterly sort of feel. So I don't worry about it. And also it's quite good, you know, Lightroom is very good at reducing noise and things like that. So technically, no. If you know, you have to look for the light to create the portrait. So you're looking for those things. You're looking for the light. You're looking for the location. You're looking for you know, the character and the expression, like I said before, and also matching all of that with the pose.
Perfect. Brilliant. Yeah, that's great. Brilliant. I'm going to hang on to the other few that I've got because they're kind of a bit more general. But yeah, that's a great start. Thank you.
Okay, so we were at Catherine, weren't we, here? So, and talking about how we can separate the couple. They don't always need to be together. Now, Catherine has got a really slight frame. So I've thrown this into the webinar because first of all, I think this is just such a beautiful picture. I love the way that she's framed, and then we have the arch in the background, and we've got the light coming in from the door, which highlights her dress, and it kind of blends into shadow around at the back. And I love the colours in it. But what's important in this image is that she's actually very, very slight. And to create shape in slight people can be quite difficult at times. So all I've asked her to do is just stand with one leg in front of the other. And by doing so, it allows the dress to fall down across her legs, and it forms this sort of very soft triangle. And that's really important. You know, people of all shapes and sizes want to have stunning pictures, and we need to be able to read the situation, read our client, and quickly be able to make these decisions which create stunning images. Sorry, excuse me, I'm running out of water. Jenna Lee here, she's absolutely stunning, and always wanting to create something elegant. I framed Jenna Lee again in this beautiful doorway. Framing with doors can really draw your eye into your subject. Again, this is lit with natural light from the window, and the light falls across her dress and it picks up the beautiful texture and lace. With this image, I've asked Jenna Lee to face the wardrobe to begin, actually, and then she's slowly turned around towards camera, and this allows her dress to twist around at the bottom. Jenna Lee's crossed her ankles in this situation, and I've asked to place her weight on her back leg, and this pushes her hip towards the light, but her shoulders move back. Again, you can see I've been careful with the hands here, and I've been mindful to use the narrowest point, which is obviously really important to me. Posing guys is a little bit more not difficult, but it's really about their expression and their masculinity. In this pose here, John was incredibly not sad, but emotional before he got married, and I wanted to pick that up in this shot. So we've seen before how we've been able to pose guys with triangles in their legs to make them look really strong, but in this image here, it was really all about his expression. So I've placed him again in the window light. He's just leaning against the pane of glass, and I've asked him to bring his hand up. And even in this shot, although you can see a lot of his hand, the light just catches the narrowest point, which leads to his face. And then using the reflection in the panel, in the glass here, it reflects his expression some more. So we have the opposite to John. We have Tom, who is a real cheeky character, and we can see that through his expression, which is, again, all of these things make for really great photographs. And I've just done something very simple with him. I've just posed him against this wall. I've set him back from the light, so the light comes in and just sort of falls across him, which illuminates him and makes him stand out from the dark background. With that said, not every image needs to be choreographed. And here I just wanted to create something simple and timeless which shows off the happiness, love, and of course the venue. I have paid a wee bit of attention to their bodies, but other than that, I've just left it all to them. And I think that's really important when you're photographing a wedding. You know, you want to create something which is really stunning and breathtaking, but at the same time, they don't always want to have these choreographed images. So it's nice just to bring a mix. So they've got something stunning that they can showcase in their album, but they've got something which is really all about them, all about the venue, and all about their day. And that is really important in meeting their client expectations. Again, here, I just wanted to do something quite classic. So I've got the bridesmaids and the groomsmen looking quite elegant, and they're all smiling, having a good time. Again, this was just really about, you know, creating something which wasn't so choreographed, but they were going to absolutely love. And I found a good background. You know, I found an interesting place to put them, and they've all really enjoyed having that photograph taken. So, you know, wedding days aren't just about creating breathtaking portraits, as I've just mentioned. There's a lot of action throughout the day, and using the skills which are needed to create beautiful photographs and portraits, we use these to create and capture stunning memories too. Couples will always want to have a mixture in their album of portraiture and documentary. So it's really important that we can flip between the two disciplines. These are just some photos that I wanted to show you of a more documentary style. Again, natural light, looking for the light. This shot's fantastic. You know, they had these massive windows in the reception area, and the light was just flooding in, and you can just walk around and you can choose your different lighting setups by using this, you know, massive softbox. I love this image in particular because the little chap, he's just leaning on this bench down at the bottom, and he's obviously telling some quite naughty story. Everyone's quite engaged with him. Just some documentary shots which fill the clients' albums. One of my favourite times of the day is at sunset, and I think most photographers would say that. The golden hour is just lovely, and we can really use it to our advantage. But here, and by the end of the day, my clients really know what to expect. They've kind of had a whole day of being posed and choreographed, so they kind of know really. They become well rehearsed at what makes a picture perfect image. I give them a little guidance in how to hold their hands and walk while I concentrate on the light. Here I've deliberately backlit the couple, which separates them from the background. So ultimately, a little bit of direction goes a long way to making even the most simple photographs look elegant and timeless. Using this approach to wedding photography has allowed me to capture, or allows me to capture, the whole essence of the wedding day, from creating stunning portraits to capturing the love and laughter throughout the day. The one thing I'd be mindful of is to match the pose with the couple. Don't complicate the pose if the bride and groom can't achieve what you have in mind. Create something simple. The pose is meant to look effortless and elegant. Here, I've just asked the bride to put her weight on her back leg and bringing her knee up, resting her hand on his shoulders. Makes a simple and elegant photograph. The groom too, this guy, John, he was a pretty big guy, but asking him to sit down brings balance to the image, and the light, the little light that we had in this room, falls onto the bride. I don't need to say anything about the background with this image. It looks like it's just a stunning, striking background. So I think that brings me to the end of my presentation. As I said, this was a follow-up on client expectations, and we need to be able to deliver some pretty gorgeous photographs that they're going to absolutely love to showcase to their friends and family and generations. To have timeless images, beautiful, elegant portraits are really, really important. as well as all the documentary photos that slip in between. So I'm happy to take any questions that are out there today.
There's plenty, so there's no fear of that, love. So excellent. But before we actually get into them, they're not going to be in any particular order because they're actually coming in through quite thick and fast now. So we will answer them all, obviously. But what I just want to say up front, and again, it was something that we had back and we've had tonight already as well. Great, simple and to the point presentation, but how easy when you make it seem easy, or it sounds like you make it seem easy about, obviously you clearly love what you do, which is half the battle in this day and age, but it's just the simplicity. But a few of the things that came through tonight, which I don't think came through last time, which is great, is because we've looked closely tonight at posing, and obviously both male and female, but there was quite a few. There's a few. There's one I'm going to touch on now in a moment. The strength of your male posing and how difficult male photographers actually find that. I think that was something that when it came through, I started looking at a bit more, and they're absolutely right. There's a beautiful balance there. You all clearly understand the feminine pose, but you clearly look strongly at the man's pose as well. And I think sometimes it's a lot harder to pose a man than it is a woman. And then sometimes in a wedding situation, you can have the most awkward bride. I appreciate that, but no, there is a real strength to your male posing as well that really shone tonight as well. Whether I've just picked up on it because a few people have mentioned it, I don't know. Yeah. But it was quite interesting that you and I were talking earlier today about how I wanted to bring you down in the new year to do some posing guides for us.
Yeah.
And the first question was asked, please, can you get Fiona to do some male posing guides for us? So we'll definitely, yeah. So when we get you down for that, we'll make sure because I probably would have typically, and I would have just got you a bride, but now I'm definitely going to get you a bride and groom, and we'll split it out, and we'll do.
I think it's really important because it's tough when you have a couple and they're standing in front of you. What do you do with them, and how do you create portraits that they're going to absolutely adore? So understanding both the male form and the female form actually really does help. But ultimately, it's about keeping things really simple as well, I think.
Well, that's definitely going to happen now. It was going to happen anyway, but it's definitely going to happen now. And I'll get you down for a couple of days. We've got beautiful studio light, natural light, as you know, in the studio here. But we'll also, if we get the weather right, we'll get you out on location with the bride and groom as well. So we can.
Yeah, I love it.
We've got some great places around here we can use. So that's definitely going to happen anyway. So it's going to happen anyway. Right, let's get into the questions then. Okay, so going back to the natural light angle, we didn't mention whether you ever use any kind of reflectors at all as well.
I do actually. I do like to bounce a little bit of light back into my subjects if I can. Normally I just ask, because I work on my own quite a lot, normally I ask one of the bridesmaids or groomsmen just to help me. But yeah, I do like to use them.
Brilliant. Actually, well, that's I know I knew the answer to this because it was asked last time, but you kind of just answered it. Do you work by yourself, or do you ever have an assistant or a second shooter with you?
Yeah, I work by myself. I have had assistants in the past, which have been absolutely great to have on board. But generally, I work by myself. Yeah.
Brilliant. And sometimes
quite a lot all over the country, so it's kind of hard to expect people to come with me, and of course then there's the expense as well of that. And
sure, yeah. But again, I think what shone tonight as well, obviously we can see, well, it's quite interesting that one of the questions, let's ask it now before we get into that kind of conversation. But there was a question that came through, let me just find it. It was a bit further down. Where is it? I thought it was near the top. I'm getting it. Oh, here it is. Is your signature style placing subjects in a large interior or exterior background? I'm reading it really badly because what's happened is questions are coming through freaking fast and it's moving my question panel. Let's go back. Right,
And again, I whizzed through that presentation a lot quicker than I thought I would.
No, it's fine. There's plenty of questions we got. We're all good. It's great. Otherwise, we probably would have been here all night. So it's perfect timing. Is your signature style placing subjects relatively small in the grand landscape or interior spaces?
I think it depends on what you're trying to achieve with the image. So the image that we're looking at right now, I wanted that background to be caught. You know, I wanted it to be part of the picture. So they are going to be quite small in frame, if you like. But then if we go back to the beginning and we look at Kobe, she's actually quite small in frame. And I didn't really have much choice other than to capture her. I guess to me, she looks quite big in frame to me. I haven't gone quite close up onto her, if you like. I haven't really picked up her eye makeup by coming in too close to her. So I understand what the question is, and maybe I'm contradicting myself slightly here, but I like to give my couples and my subjects room to breathe. And I think that if you're doing a portrait which is really tight up, if you're close up to their face, then you are showing off their makeup or their hair or a detail that they have on their faces. But to me, I want my subjects to actually breathe and to give them room, so it draws your eye straight down to the subject and the bride. And also, quite a lot of time, all the time they're wearing these beautiful dresses, and you want to be able to see them. Does that make sense? I kind of feel like I went round that in one way.
It's going to lead me onto a question in the same vein then. Well, more of a business question, really. So, with respect, obviously, with looking at the way we see, we'll call them your signature images. Obviously, we've seen so many of them tonight. Are you looking at, or are you thinking at the time of anything more than the album? Are you thinking about possible wall art, or is it just this is just the way you shoot, and then that depends on the client? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So ultimately, I'm shooting for the album. So ultimately, I want the client to be able to open up this album and for there to be beautiful pages, one after the other. So I'm shooting for the album. If I can create some wall art in that mindset, then I've done a very, very good job. A very good job.
I think that's the question I was asking, really, I suppose, and you've answered it perfectly. Is that on the job then you are just thinking about the album, you're not going to lose focus on anything else. This is just the way you shoot, this is your style, and ultimately the thing that's in your head is for the album, and obviously anything else then is a bonus, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Because sometimes inside an album as well, you'll probably have a double page spread.
Yeah.
And maybe they would use that later on for wall art. Actually, this bride, she's bought this picture for her. Go back to it. They've actually bought that in a frame to hang in their flat.
Yeah.
And I didn't create that with wall art in mind. I created that. I was walking down the street in Mayfair. I saw these yellow chairs and no one was sitting there, and I thought, wow, that's going to make a very interesting picture. So I asked them if they wouldn't mind sitting on the chairs. They were loving it. We had such a great time already that day creating some stunning stuff. So yeah, they were very happy to entertain my vision.
And that's great. And I think there's a lot of clients that are like that. I mean, there are some that are very classical and they just want what they want, isn't it? But when you have a young, fun couple, it does makes your life a little bit easier and a little bit, well, you can be freer, can't you? And at the end of the day, though, if they've booked you, they should have an idea of who you are and what you do. I think it's a real skill, and my hat's off to you. And I know Mark here does it as well, to be able to shoot the different styles within the wedding, from the documentary to the classic. That's a job in its own right, and to be able to do it. I mean, I've followed Mark on many weddings, and I can't believe how he does it. So my hat's off to all of you, because we often see, some of the other teachers on the site, having the second shooter just for the documentary stuff, because they don't do both. So to do both, but then I get it, and you've got complete control in your vision then of the day. So if it is something you can do, then I respect it fully. Right, let's get back to a few more techie ones. Let's so again, not in any order. I do apologise, but there's just too many for me to sift up. Oh, I tell you what, can you leave us on the image for now? Somebody's just asked. Well, not leave us, but let's go back to not that image. Sorry, the one of John, the black and white with the reflection in the mirror. It caused so much fuss on how they loved it and how emotional it was. They'd like to see it again. So let's have that one on screen for a little bit. So there we go. So there you go, Vernon. I've got it back on screen for you. But it is a really strong image. I love that image. And like you said about capturing the emotion of the day. I'm not thinking that, as we discussed earlier. Mine's a couple of years away, but I don't know what I'm going to be like. I'm not even going to think about it. I think it'll be more terrified than anything else, but we'll see. Okay, back to the techies. Metering. Are you metering in camera, or do you use a light meter?
Well, that's interesting. What do? I look at the light before I look through the camera. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I'm always exposing for the eyes or where I want my camera to be. So the camera will automatically just read that light for me. Then I make a decision on what do I want to pull out? What detail do I want to pull out? And so I actually knock the exposure down by maybe a stop and a half. So I'm not a very technical photographer. I have done light reading when I was training, but now I'm looking. It just becomes instinctual, I think.
I think so, and you do it a lot, yeah. So yeah, ultimately, do you have just simple? So it's just in meter camera and then in camera metering.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Do you have a preferred? How do you? I'll try again. Sorry. Your method for color balance. Are you doing that again in camera with settings, or are you using anything?
I set my camera to 5,000 kelvins, and I leave it at that. So when it comes into post, I have to color correct the images slightly, especially as you go into the evening and you become under tungsten light. Then it's too warm sometimes, or there's a different hue on it, so I correct it in post. But I just leave it on 5,000, and I just kind of crack on. There's so much to worry about when you're photographing a wedding. You've got to move very quickly from one room to another, from one situation to another. You've got to be able to read people. You've got to be able to communicate with people. And I think this is why I've just kind of left the technicalities behind, because to me, I want to create a really beautiful image. And again, perhaps it's just become instinctual. I can just get my camera to do what I want. And so sometimes I tend to forget really how I get there technically.
I didn't think to ask, and it has come up now actually, because we've got a few questions about lenses and stuff. But what camera do you use, Liv?
I use a Nikon 810. Is it 810? Hold on, I just
Nikon user, so I don't know.
Here we go. It's just that. Yeah, a D810 I use. I was on an 800 and I've literally just upgraded it to an 810, a D810. I should have waited a few more months and I could have had the 850. Damn it!
Yeah, that's fair point. Well, that was one of the questions I was going to ask, but obviously you just answered that. Have you thought about switching to mirrorless at all? No. No,
I haven't. I might do. I think the end result is the same.
Yeah.
You're not. I'm not very technical, but my end game is to meet those client expectations, to go beyond creating just average photography and creating something which is just breathtaking for my clients, not for myself, but for my clients. And so whatever tool I use, I'll get there regardless, whether it's a DSLR or a mirrorless. Maybe not an iPhone. I can't take iPhone. Yes.
No, well, fair enough. I can, but no, I shot my sister, not as the photographer, but I shot my sister's wedding on my iPhone for her, and she had a lovely photo book from it. But it was
No.
very documentary style. But no, she had a real photographer. Well, she had Mark, so she did have a real photographer. But she'd asked me if I would cover the day on my iPhone. I said, well, yeah, well, but while I remembered, but yeah, it
I'd
was a
love to
nice thing.
see
But
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah, I'll have to get it off. I haven't seen it in a while. It's probably really shocking now I think about it. But it was all black and white, and I think it was all shot. I don't know. It was a while ago now. It's probably all shot on in Hipstagram. It's not Hipstagram. What went about Hipstamatic? You know, one of those
Yeah.
trendy apps my sister liked, sort of thing. But yeah, different.
Cool.
How many shots do you take on average per wedding?
Well, it depends on the wedding. So if the wedding is going to be if the wedding's busy and it's beautiful and there's a lot going on and they've paid a lot of attention to detail, then maybe about 2,000. Maybe a wee bit more. But if it's quite a quiet affair and perhaps the detail isn't there, maybe about, I don't know, 1,900. Just depends, really. Depends on the wedding.
And how many do you think then typically do you show the clients? Do you think?
500. 500 plus.
All right. Okay. So it's a pretty full on edit. How quickly would you edit the wedding? Would you say, or get it down to the 500?
About 2 working days, 2 8 hours, 16 hours.
Oh, okay.
So I'll go through, which probably sounds quite a lot. I don't really know, but I'll go through and I'll make my first pass. So I cull quite quickly. If the photo doesn't interest me, then it doesn't go in. I might have just taken it for the sake of taking it. That's the beauty of digital, isn't it? You can just take what you like. But if the photo doesn't interest me, it doesn't go in.
Yeah.
If it's out of focus, it doesn't go in. Those kind of things.
You mean creative blur?
Creative blur, yeah, that's it. That's go in, unless it really is very creative, and then it might go. And then after that, I just do very quick. I go through and I just edit very, very quickly. I just kind of make simple color corrections, change the contrast, brighten it, or drop it down. Generally, I actually underexpose quite a lot. So sometimes I'm lifting a lot, sometimes, but I do that because I want to retain the detail in the wedding dress. So there is purpose to madness.
Right. Been asked this a few times actually, so it's good it's up next in the list. Do you have any preferred lenses, or what are your go-to lenses on the wedding day?
So I want to have a lot of flexibility on a wedding day, and my lenses are 24 to 70, 70 to 200. I've tried to use prime lenses. I've got an 85 and I've got a 50, but sometimes they don't give me the flexibility that I want. So if I have to move backwards and forwards to capture the image that I want in frame, and sometimes that's not achievable. Sometimes it is, and if you're outdoors and it's great and you've got that flexibility to be able to move, but quite often we are actually indoors, and I find it too restricting. So I stick to those 2 lenses.
Great, brilliant. Do you pre-scout the wedding locations to get some ideas for the shots on the day?
Yes, I do, and that's really important. So ultimately, what I want everyone to take away from this webinar is that a pre-shoot is really essential, because you get to know the venue, you can walk around, you can find the locations that you want to shoot in. Incidentally, sometimes those locations may not be available, or you found something a little bit more interesting on the day. But it's about being with your client when you're doing that recce, and it's about getting your client to trust you and getting them to practice how to stand and how to move. So all my clients would know what I'm going to do with them before the wedding day. They know that I'm going to ask them to shift their weight from one leg to another, or twist their shoulders a little bit, or use hands in a specific way. So on the wedding day, there's no, I've taken the pressure off. I've taken the pressure off myself, and I've taken the pressure off the client, because we know what we're going to be doing, we know how we're going to be working.
And would you typically then, I think you've already answered it, but so typically you would do the pre-wedding shoot at the wedding venue then, is it? Is that what you'd look to do most of the time?
Yes, yes, I would.
Perfect.
I would. Absolutely,
Brilliant.
I would, yeah.
Excellent. Handheld, or do you use a tripod or a monopod at all?
Oh no, handheld all the time. I don't own a tripod which is big enough to take my camera. I've got a monopod, but I don't get on well with it.
Excellent.
Oh, I just stick to myself. That's fine.
Okay, let's have a look. So I've got a couple of they're longer questions. Let's make sure I get them right. Do you have any tips on how to remember posing? Do you have such like a checklist, or is it just something that you've been doing long enough now? You kind of have your sort of go-to poses. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So quite often I will think of the pose and write it down. So after the pre-wedding shoot, and I've gone through the photographs, I've got a sense of what these people are like and how they're going to interact with each other. And so I can actually think of different setups. So on the wedding day, I can go to my notepad and go, oh yeah, let's do this. Or it becomes ingrained in me and I don't need to go to my pad. But if I get a little bit stuck and I don't know what to do with them, then I've got something to refer to. And it's good practice. If you want to improve your photography, and if you want to be able to push your photography to the next level, it's a really good discipline to get into. It just gives you that little bit of extra confidence, because sometimes you're running around and you're kind of like, oh, what am I going to do? I'm going to have you here, I'm going to have her there, we're going to bring them together, and then your mind just goes blank and you just think, oh, what can I do? What can I do? And you can just go to your notebook and your little sketch pad and go, yes, I'm going to do that. And it just gives you a little bit of extra spark, I suppose, extra motivation, extra sort of, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
No, I get it. No, and sometimes it's quite easy to on a wedding day to get distracted, or you often go, oh, have I forgotten something? And there is enough time, I think, doing enough weddings that I've done with Mark and the team here, that there is downtime, well, not loads of downtime, but for the photographers, when the bride and groom are having a glass of wine or whatever, champagne,
Yeah.
you can quickly refer back to something and just refresh yourself, especially maybe before you've got your allocated bride and groom time and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
A cheeky little plug that I'll just jump in there, guys, if you haven't seen it already, on the Photography Academy, we do have these posing guide apps that you can download for free if you're a pro or business member. And there's a load of like sort of bride and groom ones on there and things like that. So they're halfway down the dashboard page. And maybe again, I know it depends on obviously Fiona having the permission from her clients, maybe we could talk to her nicely about maybe creating one for us, and then we could give them away to them.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, excellent. But yeah, there's a load on there already, and I'll do that now. I'll get Fiona to make us one, just so you can. So they're great. They're just on your phones, so you've got them on your phone. You can just it's an app, and you can just quickly you don't have to be online for it. But it's we used to Mark used to sell, and we still have some. We used to sell little pocketbooks, exactly what you were on about, of posing guides. We had them for weddings. We used to have them for portraiture. We had them for boudoir, and they were little square, pocketbooks, exactly for that reason. And of course, the digital age has taken over from that. So I think they were given away as charity prizes last year when we were on tour, but the app's taken its place. I thought this next question it was lovely, and I think we've had something similar like it before, but I think it's great that it's come up tonight. So I'm going to read it out to you. So, hi Fiona, great work and some great advice on posing. I'm currently working as a second shooter. I've learned a vast amount. I'm about to start advertising myself as to potential clients as a wedding photographer now. Would be interested on some top tips on how to get started to get that elusive first booking.
Oh, crikey. Well, it's tough. It's not easy. The work that you have, obviously you've built yourself a website, but maybe try and get in with the venues where you've actually already worked. They might have an open day that you could go to and set up a stall. That's how I did it, essentially. A local wedding fair I shot. Actually, do you know what? I didn't even shoot there. They were just advertising and were looking for space to sell to stallholders. So I was lucky enough to get in there. And off the back of that, I got myself a couple of gigs. And then it was just all about, you know, I don't even think that blogging was a big thing back then. You know, when I started out, it was 2010. So I certainly didn't blog. It's tough, but I think it's the website. You've got Facebook, you've got Instagram, local wedding shops. I would put flyers in local wedding shops, you know, wedding dress shops. I would speak to venues all the time. I pushed myself quite hard actually when I first started, just to try and get my name out there.
I don't think it's any different today, Fiona. You're exactly right. You know, any kind of photography, you know, marketing yourself, you've just got to do it, and you've got to do it hard. It isn't going to come overnight. I mean, one of the things I remember, and this is way back in the day, but exactly what you just said. We found that we had a couple of weddings booked at at the same venue here in just outside Cardiff, but a very expensive venue, Mark said, "Oh, do you know what? I've got quite a good variation of images now from this one venue," and he just produced a photo book, a hardback photo book, like a album, like a coffee table book, but he called it the name of the venue, you know, and he took it and he gave it to them. So you know, the cost was ours. I mean, you know, I priced one the other day on Loxley, 25 quid for a 10 spread photo book, hardback, you know, coffee table book, but we left it there. And it was given to the general manager, and the general manager, not only did we get a booking to photograph the venue for their next brochure, we became their go-to photographer for their weddings, and that was the one that was shown to people. The album was shown to their prospective clients. So yeah, absolutely knock on doors without a doubt. And you nailed it. You were absolutely right. Florists, you know, makeup artists, hair salons, that sort of thing, you know, maybe do some work for them in return that they're gonna, you know, you can have a book or a flyer or a brochure in with them, you know, get in with the wedding florist, you know, and work with each other. That's a really good advice there. But you're right, you've just got to push yourself, website, social media. I'm not sure about blogging, but I mean, blogging is bigger than it ever has been. But I think Instagram, if you're a wedding photographer, without a doubt, and just get yourself seen, seen, you know, that's the key. But yeah, some great advice there. Oh, this was quite interesting. This always comes up in wedding webinars. How many group shots are you asked to take on average if you do group shots? Because quite a lot of photographers actually don't do them anymore, do they? Or they say they don't do them.
I think group shots are quite important. Going back to this slide here, I tell them what I think is a good number to shoot. So, and again, it's all going back to those client expectations, and it's about building that trust between you and your client. And if they want to have 15 group shots, of course, I will photograph whatever they want me to photograph. Yeah. But they go in knowing that that's not going to be a very nice experience. It's going to be quite stressful, and they're going to be saying, "Can we wrap it up now, please?" So I always suggest about 8, 6 to 8, and it really is very simple. It's immediate family, parents, siblings, grandparents if they're still with us. We photograph the whole wedding party anyway at first. Sometimes I offer to photograph the hen do and the stag do, because, you know, they're university mates, work mates, you know, quite close friends. So that makes for quite good fun. And then we go straight into those family portraits, which are very, very simple. Not every family is that simple. The dynamics can be quite complex, or they've got family which have come over seas for the wedding. So of course I am flexible, and if they want to have those group shots, then that's fine. But I make it very clear to them that this is about them enjoying their wedding day, and it's not about them standing in front of a camera, you know, asking them to smile, standing in a line. So it depends. I think sometimes you need to take control of your wedding party and your clients, because you want to be able to produce beautiful photographs, and you're not going to be able to do that in environments that are becoming tedious and stressful.
I agreed. I think it's, just watching and working with Mark for the last, 30 odd years. Well, I haven't worked with him 30 years, but it feels like it. But even if it's like, the last 20 years that I've been around him and around weddings, I've definitely seen a change from the days of doing hundreds of group shots to maybe not being as expected. There's definitely in the last few years, they're still having the group shots, but like you've said, they're quite more refined key
Yeah,
groups. Maybe what,
yeah.
obviously there's always going to be some special family that you will have to, photograph, especially if they've traveled distances. But I see more often than not like the really big group being much more popular, the whole thing, because a lot of them are repeated. So I think it is changing, but obviously I think you answered it perfectly. You're going to do what the client wants, really.
Ultimately, yes, but give them some advice, give them options.
I know we haven't really seen it tonight, but well, we did see it a little bit maybe with that the gentleman and the big image that was sat down. But top tips
Yeah.
if the bride or the groom are slightly larger, what's the best sort of posing tips on maybe hiding the larger size? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I think that there's everybody has shape and form, and we want to create the best out of those shapes. And I think when I'm photographing larger ladies, then I try to slim out their waist very slightly. So I'll try and move their, depending on the light source coming through, I'll either shift their weight very slightly or their hip away from the light, which will narrow them a little bit. And maybe bring their torso closer to camera. That gives a nice sort of narrowing effect. With guys, I get them sometimes to lean to camera a little bit. I get them to sit down. It depends. It depends on so much on how their suit fits to the location that you've got them in, and what you're wanting to try and create. John here, he's a massive guy. He's a rugby player. And he's quite tall and he's quite broad, but you wouldn't think that in this image here.
And this is the same chap from the black and white image earlier, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So it's amazing, and us big, brawly guys are the most emotional. I dread it. I absolutely dread it. I put off this hard man exposure. I won't be. I'll be a blubbering fool. If
Oh, honestly, he was really emotional. It's really sweet, actually.
Mel's going to be the tough one, and it's going to be me like a blubbering idiot, and she'll probably just smack me and say, "Grow up, you idiot," or something like that. That'd be excellent, brilliant. I just want to say. There's just a couple more questions, but somebody said with regards to John's image, probably the strongest and the best portrait they've seen this year so far. So just feed that back to you.
That's nice to hear.
But it is I love that image, really, really strong, brilliant. Okay, just a couple of quickies left, love. Okay, so, swapping lenses, or do you use more than one body on the day?
Oh, do you know, I'm terrible. I swap lenses.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of people that don't have any choice, but yeah, brilliant. Okay.
My backup camera, and that's with me all the time. But I swap lenses. It's actually kind of just quick and easy. Other than that, I'm carrying these two camera bodies around, and I'm frightened of just knocking them into things, and I need to anchor them to me somehow. So I just prefer just to work with one camera, swap the lenses. It's no drama.
Brilliant. Oh, this was interesting. So this is a bit more on the business side of it. So do you sell your time, or are you selling packages? What's the sort of way you approach your wedding?
So I have two packages. Okay, so and they're both digital. And I'm with the client for all day. So I have my first package is $12.50. I'm going to be open with my prices. They're on my website anyway, so I'm not frightened about people knowing. I work with the client from the bridal preparations up into the speeches. That's my first package, and then my second package, I'm with the client all day for a good 10 hours. That's £1,500. It's a digital package. They get files with that. Online gallery, the basics. And then if they want to, then they can upgrade. up into printed albums, and I'm finding my clients are now leaning more towards the printed albums because I'm shooting with that in mind. So I'm shooting with, you know, these pictures that really need to not be just stuck on a computer, and they need to be in a book.
Yeah, I agree, and I think, you know, one of the biggest questions that we get asked in all the business stuff that we do is, you know, we love this question: how do we compete with the £200 shoot and burn photographer? Don't compete with
Yeah.
them. You know, you've got to believe in who you are, got to believe in your prices, got to believe in your work. But that you're absolutely right. We've seen, you know, there was a digital time, but the album is definitely back.
I think it is.
Without a doubt. And I know I for one, and as you know, that, you know, obviously I've been talking with my partner about it. Hands down, yeah, I will want an album. I don't want. I don't know whether photographers see it slightly differently, but, you know, we have photographs and millions of them on hard drives that we ask ourselves, do we ever look at again? You know, and I spent last summer. I'd realised that I'd had about, over the last 5 years, I'd had quite a good couple of, you know, traveling trips, and I take my camera everywhere. When I go on holiday, I want to record my travels. And they were all on a hard drive, and I hadn't seen the images again in 5 years. So, you know, Mel said to me, well, just, you know, make some books. And that's what I did. And it took me a couple of weeks to do it all. But it was the best thing I did. And they're on my shelf now, and, you know, I've looked at them, my family have looked at them, and I keep going back to them. So, you know, I think it's important, but I think the album is by definitely back. And for us here, you know, it does increase the value of what you can charge, you know, and it's something that, you know, we have, exactly like you, we have time packages that include how much hours we do per day for the wedding. They can buy extra, you know, more, not buy more time, but different levels of coverage. But all of our packages actually include an album, but we start at £2,000, like you said. So, but we don't, and we don't do digital. We don't do digital. Well, that's not true. Okay, not a case. It's not on our price list. And if somebody asks from us, they can have it, but it's really expensive. So
I'm gonna come on one of your
absolutely. Couple of, so we're just at the last couple of questions. A few have come in since we've been talking about albums. Do you so obviously in the digital packages, I presume, are they getting a high res digital image? They can do what they like with that, can they?
They're 3,000 pixels on the longest side, so they can do what they like with them. They can print them off if they wish. But I'm starting to regret this quite quickly.
And do you so the preview then to the client, is that in the form, is that online, or is it done via sample album, or what do they see?
It's done online actually, and also in my office. So I invite them to come and take a look. But if they live quite far away and they can't get to me, then I deliver it to them online, and they see it online first. And then we have a discussion after that about getting their photos into albums.
Well, that was giving me my second point to the question, actually, because I know we discussed it earlier. We were going to try and show a slideshow, but we know that the webinars don't do them very well, unfortunately. So, when they've gone down the album route, would you then preview the album design before it's finalised? Do they see that as spreads before it goes ahead?
Yeah, always, because they might not like something. And then can you imagine getting the album back and then saying, oh, you know, we don't like that, we'd rather have something else? You'd be scuppered, wouldn't you? So I designed the PDFs, and I design the pages, and I export them as PDFs, and I get them to approve the images. They make their selection, which I know is something that is also a bit frowned upon, I suppose. But ultimately, I want them to be in control of their album, and because I mix up portraiture with documentary, they've got quite a lot to choose from. So generally, I'm quite happy with their selection, and they make around about 70, and I might put 40 into a book, into a 20-page book. So there's lots of options there for me to still be quite creative. Sometimes I'll go back and say, look, you know, I'm not really happy with this page layout, but I think it might be good if we were to do something else. And yeah, take it from there, really.
Brilliant.
I want to give them as much flexibility at the end that I can give them, I suppose. I want them to be really happy with the after service as well. Do you know, the aftercare?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I've got one last question, but then I want you to stay on with me because we want to quickly chat about what you did for us in this month's magazine. But with the last question with this now, and this is staying on the sort of digital and digital sort of route there. And I think I already know the answer, but let's pose it anyway. Obviously, when we are selling a digital file, we have lost the control over them being able to take it to the likes of Costco or online to have their own wall art done. The question was any tips on how to reduce that from happening. And so, but as I'm probably why I asked earlier whether you sell digital or not, and the only real way is to obviously try and sell the wall art yourself, really, and take digital off the menu or make it expensive.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have to say, if you're a photographer creating images that you want to have in frames and you want to have them on your clients' walls, then your business strategy needs to be in line with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just because I'm shooting for an album, I don't have that end vision, so I'm not thinking that far in advance. My packages are easy because they because I don't have any sort of complex product to bolt on to the end of it because I haven't thought that far in advance. I think
we've had it here though, and you're absolutely right. We've had it here, you know, where we've sold a high-res digital file, and we've had exactly what that gentleman just asked in the question panel, was that we've had somebody go, well, they've come to the studio with this canvas print that they've had done wherever. And it was shocking. And then, you know, we took them into the gallery and said, well, look, this is a calibrated digital monitor. This is what you were given. And we even had the file that we opened the file that we gave them, sold them, and went, this is what you're going to get back from our designed lab, but that's what it's going to cost you, you know. And they got it and they understood and they ended up buying the picture from us, you know, in the first place. But it unfortunately it's something that we're always going to have to battle with. It's always out there. As we said, we don't sell we do sell the digital, but we're really expensive. But the album is part of our package, so we're still working towards the album. That's our goal. And then obviously in our price list on our upsell, we do have wall art available. But
well, it's definitely food for thought. And going back to that image with the couple on the yellow chairs at the very beginning of the presentation, I'll just scroll back there quickly. They've asked if they can have that printed. They didn't ask me directly. They said we're thinking about having this image printed and to have on display in their bedroom. And I have taken control simply because I said I know exactly what type of paper you need to have this on, and I can speak to the printers and I can organise this for you. And they've left it with me to do that.
Yeah, brilliant.
So you know, I think it's you've given me some food for thought, Jay.
Excellent. Well, we're going to be chatting soon anyway, so we'll talk some more about that without a doubt. Brilliant. Well, but obviously we're going to talk about something else a little bit different from you now in a sec. But just before I forget, with regards to tonight, again, a fantastic insight. I've had loads of praise and thanks through the chat panel. So
I hope so. I hope it was. I kind of felt like I rattled through it quite quickly again, but I hope your viewers have found it really useful.
Well, the feedback is definitely really useful, and I, for one, I can assure you I've done loads of these things, so don't second guess yourself. It was really great, and as we've already discussed and told them now, we're going to have you down in the new year, so we'll get you live on camera and get your pose and advice on that. But no, it was another great hour with you. And do you know what? You nailed it in that 40 minutes, and we've done the questions to time. We've only run over a little bit. It's perfect, and but let's talk about something completely different. So you're in this month's magazine, which I confess I didn't know until Sam gave me the magazine yesterday. So even though I knew you were online with me tonight, and I know that you contributed, but he said it's not weddings. And I went, oh, right, okay. So tell us about your 15-page spread in this month's magazine.
Yeah, it's pretty spectacular, isn't it? What an honour to have that in your magazine. Well, where would you like me to start, really?
Well, just to give us an insight, because it's completely, I wasn't expecting it from you. I just know you as Fiona and the wedding photographer. So tell us just a little bit about, I mean, we can't, obviously, I haven't got it here to share with them tonight. I've only got one image, but so just tell us where it came from and sort of, it's a 15-page spread, and just give us a little bit of an outline, what to check, what to see in it.
Well, I was looking for a personal project, and I was looking for something which was going to really stretch me as a photographer and as a person. And I was looking for, I was going through the news, looking for all of these kind of inspirational ideas. I was contacting charities quite a lot, wanting to go out to various places and document stories, because I wanted the stories to be able to help the people who I was photographing. That was my end game. And I was very fortunate that a friend of mine knew the CEO for Care for Calais. And after various emails going backwards and forwards, she agreed that I could go. It wasn't easy to achieve this. It wasn't easy to get into the Calais jungle at all, really. So I went to France, and it took me 2 hours to get there, and I was faced with this humanitarian crisis, really, and I wanted to really try and capture the gravitas of the situation that we were in. If people don't know what I'm talking about, I went to Calais, and I photographed 2 weekends in the jungle just before it got closed down, and that's the article in the magazine. And the images really were to depict how people were living, how they were putting together to survive. It wasn't easy to do, but I'm really, really pleased that I was able to get there. I was really pleased to be able to photograph this work, and I wanted to make more of it than perhaps I should have done at the time, but it's great to see it in this magazine, and I think it's really important that people are aware of how these people are surviving.
It is brilliant. I mean, like I said, I hadn't seen it until yesterday when Sam gave me the magazine and to upload, to distribute, and then I had a quick scan of it this afternoon, and I'm going to read it tonight. But just the images alone just struck so many chords in me. I'm a big documentary photography fan. I don't know, you don't know. I know we've been chatting for ages, but you didn't know that. But I think how important documentary photography is. How powerful it is for the right stories, and not enough stories get shared, and sometimes it's not the most pleasant of photography, but it is real, it's life. And I think photographers are making a difference, like yourself, by telling the stories that we don't often always get to tell. Mark Seymour, who was another contributor to the site, he was out doing his Indian workshops, but they pay towards the charities to do them, and the work that it's actually achieved and the awareness that it's achieved is fantastic for the children and the families of India and things like that. So everybody gets to learn a bit more. We recently had Clay Cook on with us from America, who'd been out to the aftermath of Iran and not Iran, sorry, Iraq, and he got into some places that were very, very dangerous, but it was very, very important that it happened. So
I thought that was great article.
Yeah, it's great. Well, guys, you've got to go and check this out. It's completely free read. You've got to go and see, obviously there's loads of other great stuff in the magazine, but if nothing else, go and see it for this. And Fiona, I'm just thinking about it now. It's just jumped in my head. Obviously we can't do anything this side of Christmas, but maybe we have you back and we do a webinar on this. We look at it in depth.
Yeah, I'd love to. That would be beautiful. I'd really enjoy that. That would be great.
Then we'll make that happen in the new year without a doubt, because the guys love the documentary and to learn more about it, and then we can share it. We can share it again, so it does get more and more awareness about that as well. So we'll do that. We'll definitely do that. Brilliant. Well, again, from me to you, love, thank you so much for tonight. And I hope, well, the chat panel has lit up at the so thanking you for your time.
That's really great.
Really enjoyed it. And yes, we'll definitely, well, we're going to be doing much more with you in the new year. And then maybe you'll get to photograph my wedding if it ever actually happens.
Yay!
Yeah, if she, well, yeah, it will happen at some point. I'll just be old. Well, there you go. You'll be able to show them how to hide somebody who's fat, or not fat.
Oh, rubbish.
Rather large. Yeah, no, it's all true. Well,
Rubbish.
excellent. Brilliant, guys. Thank you so much for tonight. Just a quick couple of reminders, if I may.